And kick her into present mode.
Awesome. I can see some people joining in already. Hopefully everyone's doing well. It's a beautiful spring day here in Calgary. Finally getting some good weather. How is it over there in Vancouver, Jason?
See, it's not too shabby. Thanks, Jaron. It's yeah, it's a mixture of sun and cloud, which is for this time of year, which is just awesome.
Yeah, we see people popping in here. We got about 30. Hi, Bailey, Kathy. There we go. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us. We'll let everyone keep popping into the webinar here. While you enter, why don't you guys go ahead? It's going to be an interactive session. So why don't you go ahead and tell us where you're from? Oh, we have Jackie from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Where else? Some New Jersey.
Sacramento! Exclamation mark. Love
Psyched
it.
about Sacramento. That's
Good
awesome.
energy. Seattle, Bailey, woo! The Bay Area.
Yeah, in the Bay Area, big basketball game for you guys tomorrow. Playing games. Some Texas, Southern California. Awesome. All right. Well, Indiana, Mississippi. All right, we got all of the US joining us today. That's awesome. Okay, well, I think we can start to kick off here. I just wanted to do some housekeeping before we started. There's going to be the certification code for HCI at the end of the presentation on a slide, so stay tuned for the end for that. Also, we're really excited to do a question and answer period as well, so feel free to use that chat box as much as you can. We also have the question and answer section as well, so go ahead and type in any questions on there. We'll record them and get to as many as we possibly can near the end. Yeah, so without further ado, we can get started.
Wonderful.
And kind of before we get going, I wanted to do our introductions. So if you can just present that screen there, Jason.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So we are joined here by Jason Lindstrom. He is a passionate entrepreneur. For the past 18 years, he's built 3 high-tech growth companies, always with a focus on attracting and retaining the best talent. Jason is also the CEO over here at Bucket List Rewards, and then leading employee rewards and recognition platform. Jason has done some guest lecturing at Simon Fraser University and also the University of British Columbia, speaking on the variety of topics of building high performance corporate cultures and entrepreneurship. And Jason, I hear a fun fact that you can actually walk on your hands.
Pretty darn well. I can still do it. I was in gymnastics when I was just a little guy, and that was one of the things I've retained so far. I have 2 daughters, and they love it when Daddy gets up on his handstands. And co-hosting with me here today is Jaron Mueller. Jaron has held a variety of roles in the culture space, including inclusion and diversity over at Mount Royal University. And he is our in-house cultural evangelist, and he's just an awesome guy in general. Fun fact about Jaron, he is a former professional athlete, and he was also the founder of the Professional Canadian Volleyball Association / League. So, and we are just pumped to walk you through today's webinar.
Awesome. And Jason, I think we just have a black screen there. So might need to, is everyone seeing the slides okay yet? Or you can just type in the chat box if you can see a slide there with the 2 of our faces.
So Jennifer says,
Awesome.
see slides, I can see. Awesome. Wonderful. Very good. Yes, now we can. Wonderful. All right, I'll just keep moving right along. And just as a little bit of further preamble, over here at Bucket List Rewards, we've had experience working with everything from startups to Fortune 500 organizations across all industries. We've done a ton of work in education, post-secondary education with organizations like University of Texas, tons of work in the knowledge base sector, including high-tech companies, law firms, healthcare, and we've even worked with Royal Bank, one of the biggest banks in the world. And the reason I mention all that is we're going to be sharing stories and experiences from these types of organizations in today's webinar. And speaking of which, my mission genuinely is to help people leaders like yourself build the best cultures possible. So we've made this session as action-packed as possible. We have some great templates, some really good tools, and hopefully some impactful knowledge that you can take away. And ideally, I'd love for everybody to have 1 to 3 ideas you can implement into your business today. And in terms of an agenda, we're going to be talking about the ROI of an effective recognition program, how to motivate high performance, best practices from industry leaders, and ultimately how to really implement a successful recognition program. And just as a quick preamble, I always love to do a quick pulse check to see what you're interested in. And I'm just going to throw a quick survey up on screen. I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll. In which it says, what are you interested in learning most about today from the various topics in the agenda? So go ahead and just feel free to answer the survey. Let me know what you think. Awesome. Seems like, feels like, okay, great. There's a pretty big emphasis on motivating high performance, best practices on recognition, and ideas from other companies. So we'll certainly talk about those areas, and we'll also kind of lightly touch on the ROI of a good program, mostly because it'll help. Well, I'll connect the dots in a moment, but we'll lightly touch on that today. But awesome. Thank you so much for answering that first survey question, and moving right along. So first takeaway for you is there's a great quote up on screen from Sir Richard Branson that if you take care of your people, they'll take care of your business and customers. And I've had the opportunity to meet Richard Branson. I got to go on a 3-day entrepreneurial retreat with about 20 others. I got to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner with him. And it was really cool. He was, first and foremost, he was incredibly gracious, not just with his guests, but with his team, with his employees. He knew everybody by their first name, and he was certainly very good at recognizing good work and appreciating his team that was around him. And that, I think, is one of the first takeaways, which is to have a successful program, to build a culture of recognition. It's important to have buy-in and leadership participate from the top. And I think Richard Branson does a really good job of that. And so if you already have a program in place, having leaders participate, having them recognize staff, having them tell hero stories on a regular basis is an incredibly powerful way to get good engagement and participation with your program. Great. And Jared, why don't you take her from here, bud?
Yeah, everyone's favorite thing, a quick pop-up quiz. So what percentage of Americans leave their jobs because they do not feel appreciated? So why don't we use that chat box? Let's see some of your guesses. What percentage of those employees do you think? Okay, Rachel, 60%. Okay, sounds good. Anyone else? Oh yeah, quite high. Seems like the guesses are. That's awesome. We have a smart audience here, Jason.
I love it.
Yeah, quite often. So you guys, yeah, that's great. So we can kind of move on to the next slide there, where in fact you're all very, very bang on, is that it's 64% of those employees leave because of not feeling appreciated. So to kind of really set the stage for this topic and to dive in a little bit deeper, the next stat is actually one of my favorites. So we get to decide, are leaders doing a good job with recognition? So as you can see there, 80% of senior leaders believe that they're recognizing their staff on a monthly basis. And 43% of those senior leaders saying it's even more on a weekly basis. So now let's guess what percentage of the employees feel recognized. So what do you think the connect here is between leaders and employees? So you can go ahead and type in that chat box as well. See what percent of employees feel recognized annually. Okay, Laurie's got 25%. Okay, yeah, Bailey, 35%. Okay, again, smart audience. Everyone's pretty similar guesses there. So a little drum roll, please, for the next one. All right, so in fact, 30% of employees report that that's annually. So managers were talking about kind of monthly, weekly. So this kind of really shows that there is a disconnect between managers and what they think they're doing and what employees actually want. So when we do dive in a little deeper, and this is going to be a big topic and big thing that we're going to be chatting about throughout the day, is that some of our senior leaders are out of touch with how often those employees are recognized. And without further ado, Jason can speak quite a bit more to that for the rest of the webinar.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks very much for sharing those stats, Jaron, and kind of level setting. So as Jaron said, many senior leaders are out of touch with how often employees are recognized. And obviously, this can have a big negative impact. It can result in a high turnover. It can result in disengaged staff. But that's obviously the negative side. We want to talk about best practices and the benefit and the upside to a good recognition program. So why don't we share and go into our first example of the day? So I'm going to start off by talking about Google. Why Google? Well, they're an incredibly well-known brand. They've also been recognized as the best workplace by organizations like Fortune magazine. And even if you go onto Glassdoor and read the employee reviews, for such a massive company, they've done a pretty darn good job of creating an inclusive, engaged culture. And what's really interesting about Google, they have a true enterprise rewards and recognition program in place. So that includes, they have a peer-to-peer program where staff can recognize one another for living the organizational values. They have a manager spot bonus program. They have quarterly rewards. And also in the early days, they had something really cool called the Founders Award. The Founder Award was given out for innovation. And of course, Google's a super innovative company and they want to incentivize and reward innovation because when you reward certain behavior, you'll see more of it. And so what were the outcomes of this Founder Awards? There's two big programs that come to mind almost immediately. The first is Gmail, probably a program application many of us here use. And the other one is something called Google AdSense. Now, Google AdSense is one of the bigger revenue drivers for Google. Going back to the chat window again, anybody want to take a guess how much revenue Google AdSense delivered in 2020? Feel free to type that into the chat window. A boatload? Krista, excellent. Dale, 0. It's a bit higher. Well, it's somewhere between Krista, boatload, and Dale, 0. It turns out it is $146 billion. So why is this significant? The Founders Award results in innovative programs that can drive revenue for your organization. And also super interestingly, you of course get what you reward, but Google being Google, they provided and tested a bunch of different rewards for their staff. So they tested a large cash prize versus a trip to Hawaii. So the winners of the Founder Award, they tried out these different prizes. Can you guys guess which is more effective? Which when it came to Google employees, what did they appreciate more? The large cash prize or the trip to Hawaii? Trip, cash. Ooh, we have a bit of a split audience. Cash. Ooh. It turns out the trip to Hawaii was more impactful. And here's why. The money often created a sense of animosity for those who did not get it. Whereas a trip, people could often celebrate the fact that somebody got to go on a trip to Hawaii. Also experiences from well, my personal knowledge, but also in the case of Google, experiences tend to be far more personalized and far more impactful. So the trip to Hawaii was the better reward at the end of the day. And this is, of course, something that you can take away and apply in your organization. It doesn't, and just to be clear, it doesn't have to be something big and fancy like a trip to Hawaii. Sometimes a day off, sometimes sending somebody to the spa, sometimes it's just something small and deeply personalized that matters to employees. Great. So we're going to move on to the next section. And just very briefly, we're going to talk about the ROI of recognition and why is this so important? A number of times I've seen companies keen to roll out a recognition program, but they lack management buy-in. And they lack management buy-in because they haven't clearly articulated the ROI of recognition. And so we're going to take just a few moments to go through this now, and I'm going to share some tips and tools on how to deliver this. So just some quick stats from Harvard Business Review. So no surprises here. I know we're bought in, all the attendees, but companies with a culture of recognition are 5 times more likely to have staff that feel valued. Staff are 7 times more likely to stay with their company. What's super interesting, Jaron and I, right before this webinar, were sharing some articles back and forth on how as the pandemic winds down, there's a huge prediction around a number of staff leaving. So turnover is predicted to go way up as the pandemic winds down. So having a recognition program is a really powerful way to keep staff retained and engaged. And then lastly, the bottom point, staff are 11 times more likely to feel committed to their jobs, which is an awesome indicator as well. So how do you, as an HR or maybe people leader, identify the ROI of recognition? It's one of the most common requests we actually get from our side. So we've actually gone ahead and created an ROI calculator. We're just going to give it away for free to everybody who's attending today's webinar. I'm always curious whether this is a tool people are interested in or not. So I'm going to pop up the second poll question and let me know if you're interested in, would you like a copy of this ROI? It's actually an ROI spreadsheet that you can punch the numbers into. The way it works, I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll. The way it works is you can punch the number of staff you have at your organization, average salaries, and then it'll output potential savings on your side. So awesome. Wow. 97% of you are interested in getting a copy of this. Jaron, let's be sure. Awesome. I'm glad to hear that this will be a valuable tool. We'll definitely be sure to send this out after the webinar. And I love the comments as well. Great. We're going to kind of keep trucking right along here. So next, we're going to talk about getting management buy-in. So in addition to defining and identifying the ROI, one of the most powerful ways to get buy-in is to, in fact, survey your employees. What do I mean by that? It's important to find out how well you're doing when it comes to company recognition. So as Jaron shared up front, a lot of managers, senior leaders think they're doing a great job with recognition when in fact staff aren't really being appreciated that frequently. Once you survey staff, you want to share those back with the management and leaders. And then also from my experience, sharing testimonials, sharing like real words and statements from staff is an incredibly powerful way to get buy-in. And so what does that look like? I want to talk a bit more about the testimonials. And so for example, we have a survey we'll get to in a moment that we'll share with everybody who attended today's call. But if you can capture testimonials from real employees, a part of your company, and share those with the leaders, it's a huge incentive for them to fix what's wrong in the organization. So for example, up on screen, this is a quote from a real survey. We just removed the company name. It says, when I first joined this company, I could tell leaders cared, but in the past year, I feel lonely and ignored. What happened to the company I loved? So when this specific testimonial was shared with, this was a tech company, was shared with the senior leadership team at the tech company, the CEO instantly said, we got to fix this problem. Let's get a program rolled out. Why? Because most senior leaders, in my experience, they deeply care about their team. They know that the team is responsible for delivering the results of the company. And if you take, again, going back to that Richard Branson quote, if you take good care of your team, they'll take great care of the company and customers. So quotes and testimonials are a super powerful way to get management and leadership buy-in. And so just a kind of a fun takeaway again, you don't have to answer a survey this time, but Jaron, he'll be sending off a copy of a survey, some survey questions you can send out to your team if you're interested to find out how good of a job you're doing. And Jaron, is that a Word document or what's the format of that?
Yeah, we just pop into a Word document. It's 15 questions that really hit home. So we can add that as well. Right
on. Thank you very much, sir. Cool. Next up, I'm going to talk a little bit about best practices. So we're actually going to get into a whole bunch of best practices. We're going to talk about healthcare. We're going to talk about tech. But if you're interested, we actually have a recognition best practices session. We give these away normally a handful each month, but as a part of today's webinar, we're like, wouldn't it be cool if we just kind of open it up to the attendees first? And the way it works is, for example, if you're in technology, we'll share a whole bunch of very specific technology best practice examples. It's a 30-minute presentation. There's no fees are associated with it. There's some insanely good value and takeaways. But if you're interested in participating or taking advantage of this, I'm just going to pop up a poll. I'm gonna let this run for a second. But yeah, if you want to participate in this, just go ahead and click yes. Looks like a bunch of you are, which is very cool. And I'll give that another 2 or 3 seconds to run. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Looks like super high participation rate. Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and click end poll there. Looks like around 75% of people want to try that out. I think you're going to love it. And moving right along, let's get a little more granular when it comes to those best practices. So when it comes to best practices, there's kind of 4 key pillars or elements. Those include planning, so includes things like goal setting, communication, defining the functionality of your program, meaning what sort of key pillars do you want to have as part of your program? Is it peer-to-peer, manager spot bonuses, recognizing milestones? And of course, you want to measure the performance of your program to prove that it's working. Let's dig into that planning one a little bit in a little bit more detail. So when it comes to planning, it's super important to define some of your goals. Over on the right-hand side, these are some real goals from actually a whole variety of different organizations we've spoken to. And these are some goals that your recognition program can actually deliver against. So things like increasing employee engagement, peer-to-peer recognition, it's been demonstrated can lift employee engagement by more than 25%, especially when you include your company core values. Recognition programs are so good at breaking down company silos. So I know a lot of staff are working remotely these days. Maybe you're in like a larger multinational company with offices all over the country or world. Recognition programs can do a great job connecting the team across these different locations. They can also do things like increase a feeling of recognition and appreciation amongst remote team members. Where it gets really cool, and I'll talk about this in more detail, but recognition programs can be a really powerful way to increase customer satisfaction. Or if you measure something like a net promoter score, you can reward things like delivering a high NPS score. You can increase innovation like we saw with Google. You can lower voluntary turnover by more than 31%. So once you define your goals, it's super important to get clarity on your audience. And these should be some pretty easy numbers to pull, like how many employees do you have? It's also important to understand how they want to be recognized. A lot of people want to be recognized publicly, some privately. And if you can capture that up front, and sidebar, the survey Jaren's going to be sharing with you has all these questions listed and identified. But if you can capture up front how people want to be recognized, you can be sure to include that in the recognitions themselves. Also, it's really nice to know how people want to be rewarded. Again, in my experience, what's really interesting is what we sometimes think people value is not in fact what they value. Like going back to that Google example, cash is cool. There's nothing wrong with it, but it turns out Hawaii was much more valuable. I've seen all sorts of cool rewards. I've seen people offer paid time off, just days off. I've seen some fun rewards where managers can bring their team members coffee for the week. I've seen like all sorts of corporate swag, all sorts of really creative, cool ideas. And the last 2 I'll kind of get into in a little more detail as we flow through the presentation. So once we define our plan, we have to talk a little bit about the infrastructure and how do we meaningfully get the recognition program in front of our team members. So that's step 2, the communication side of it. And let's talk about that. So again, in my experience, what I've seen time and again is most companies have their preferred or kind of favorite communication channels. So for example, maybe it's meetings, maybe it's virtual meetings. A lot of organizations these days are relying really heavily on instant messaging like Slack or MS Teams. Maybe it's mobile. Maybe a lot of your staff, maybe you have a retail force, maybe you're a hotel or you have a large restaurant chain, for example. Being able to recognize staff through mobile is really impactful. Internets, email, or maybe even digital displays and TVs. Like you have a blue collar workforce or part of your workforce is on a shop floor. Having a digital display with recognitions on it can be a very cool, easy way for them to access a program. So there's all these different channels available to you. What should you choose? So it's probably easier than you think. As I mentioned earlier, you have preferred communication methods. So let me give you a real world example. Let's say you're a knowledge-based company. In this case, let's say you're a tech company, for example. So a lot of staff are working remotely, maybe sometimes in office, they're working from coffee shops. In my experience, again, being able to recognize people via virtual meetings like Zoom or Google Hangouts is really powerful. Instant messaging like MS Teams or Slack, mobile, intranets, email recognition can be super cool, integrating with Gmail, plugging into Microsoft Outlook and digital displays. And I'm going to get a little more or highly more tactical. So how do you recognize knowledge-based workers, especially when they're remote? Let me run through a bunch of tactical things you can hopefully implement today. So we just spoke about virtual meetings. I'm going to talk a little bit more about an organization called 1-800-GOT-JUNK. They got thousands of people all over North America. And every day they do what they call the daily huddle. It's a 7-minute meeting where they talk about good news. They recognize staff and great performance. And they also share some really simple company KPIs. And what's the significant or takeaway? It creates a ton of clarity, alignment, and even happiness. Pre-COVID, I had a chance to attend one of these in person. It was awesome. It was super impactful. They had a bunch of people in the office, a whole bunch of people up on screen. It was a great way to get people excited and seeing one another's faces on a daily basis. Next up, let's talk about the instant messaging in a little more detail. So I have no doubt many of you are users of Slack or MS Teams. What's a great way to leverage these tools to get recognition programs going? Something I've seen that's really impactful is you can set up a recognition channel. You can do this for free. You can just set up a channel on other pieces of software. You can invite all staff to join, and then you can encourage them to recognize one another for living the company values. And I've seen this as a great way to get recognition in front of staff members. It's a great way to create awareness and break down silos. And just for example, one company advisor websites, they have over 90% of staff participating in these recognition channels, and they've had the program running for over 3 years. So a great way to get people participating and engaged in the long term. Next up is recognition on the go. So maybe in this case, you have a hospitality or you're a retail organization. There's an organization called Peter Piper Pizza, got over 2,000 staff, 50 locations. And what they've done, which is super cool, is managers can reward staff, recognize staff for great work right from their mobile phones. So for example, something we've seen people do, managers do, is they'll take a photo of an employee doing a great job, maybe delivering really good customer service. They'll post a little recognition, which other employees can see. And it's just an awesome way to instantly recognize staff using a communication channel that they prefer. Next up is brag boards. So again, I know many of you have some sort of intranet or corporate website. What I'd encourage you to do is plug in some sort of recognition feed and just showcase your employees' great work. You can even have staff nominate one another, and then you can share these hero stories. So again, you're celebrating staff for doing good work. Next up, I'm going to do a bit more of a deep dive into the actual specific functionality. And this is a really fun piece. I'm going to start off with peer-to-peer. I mentioned it a few times. Why do I bring it up again? It is hands down one of the best tools to recognize staff. And why is it such an effective tool? I've seen a lot of companies just start or just roll out with manager recognition, and managers, they're spread thin in many cases. They're not able to see and recognize all the great work that's taking place. When staff are included in the program, frontline workers will see their colleagues doing a great job, and it is very meaningful and impactful having your peer or colleague recognize you for doing good work. And if you do it right, you can make sure that recognition floats up to the manager as well, so they're always in the loop. So it's a great way to get good engagement. It's a good way to get participation. You also see a really large volume of recognition. And as I mentioned earlier, when you recognize staff for living core values, you can lift employee engagement by more than 25% because they feel more meaningfully connected to your company values and mission. Next up, this is one of my favorite pieces. I'm a very KPI performance-driven person. And performance rewards are an awesome way to drive performance. I think a lot of senior leaders feel the same way as I do. So this is a great way to create alignment between what senior leaders want and what staff actually want. So just for example, maybe you're a technology company, and in my experience, a lot of tech companies care about customer satisfaction. Because when you have a really happy customer, they're less likely to churn. They stick around for a long time. Maybe you're in manufacturing. and safety is super important. Safety rewards, rewarding safe behavior is a powerful way to increase your safety record and safety track record. Maybe you're in financial services and you want to reward things like sales performance, things like, loans officer of the year, or for example, maybe it's healthcare, and offering patient care awards can be powerful. But as you can quickly see, this concept can be applied to different areas, and it does, and it will significantly move the needle for you, especially when it's done strategically. So let's kind of bring it all together and share a couple of kind of cool ideas from some companies. So in this example, this is an organization called Homestead. They have thousands of staff spread out geographically across different, in this case, different care homes. A number of staff are in front of computers. A bunch of staff are actually working with the people who stay in the care homes. And at Homestead, they really wanted to reward what matters. They wanted to make it easy for staff to recognize one another for great work, and of course, enable peer-to-peer recognition. What's super cool about Homestead is they did roll out a peer recognition program. They labeled it PeerCeive. I think branding a program, I know branding a program is really powerful. It creates more ownership inside your organization. They recognize things like a last minute shift pickup because that's something that mattered to them. And again, if you reward those sorts of behaviors, you'll see more people participating in it. They gave out a patient care award. They even offered a safety award, the monthly office safety contest. The outcomes, in this case, Homestead reduced employee turnover by more than 40%, which in healthcare is, well, actually across all industries, huge. It's really significant, but in healthcare, it's deeply impactful. And they don't just reduce turnover, they also started the process of continuing to improve and build just an awesome / amazing culture. So last up, we're going to talk about measurement. How do you measure the performance of a recognition program? There's actually thousands of KPIs you can layer in, but I like to keep things as simple as possible. And I wanted to give you guys some good takeaways. So in my experience, again, you want to measure things like engagement. And I'd measure engagement on a monthly basis. So how many people are being recognized and how many people are handing out recognition is a good indicator of employee buy-in. It really depends upon the sector you're in. The companies with highest engagement will be high-tech companies often, people in front of computers, for example. And we've seen engagement anywhere from 75 to well over 95%. Management participation is also super important. For example, which managers are recognizing and which aren't. As we probably all know on this call, company employees will join a really exciting brand. They'll really join a really exciting company, but people often leave due to bad leadership. And recognition is a great way to ensure your managers are doing the best possible job they can. Another kind of cool KPI to track is rewards distributed and redeemed. Our staff taking full advantage of the program. Normally the recognition moment combined with a redeemed reward is a real aha moment. You're creating some surprise and delight in the employee journey at your company. So we were able to cover a ton of ground, which is awesome. And some of the things we covered were key industry stats, the ROI of an effective program, the importance of personalized rewards, how to get management buy-in, how to survey all your staff, and best practices of rewards and recognition. So in a few moments, we're going to be opening it up to Q&A. Before I do that, I'm just going to throw this out there. If you're interested, please feel free to take advantage of it. We are an enterprise rewards and recognition program. We'd be more than happy to help you if you want to get a program implemented. If you have any questions you want to ask around recognition, we're also happy to help answer those as well. But if you wanted to see a demo of bucket list rewards, please feel free to let us know. I'm just going to pop that poll up on screen. We have been ranked #1 rewards and recognition program, which is pretty darn cool. So I'll let this run just for a few moments. And we'll wrap it up there, and then we'll turn it over to Q&A. And I'm awfully excited to hear everybody's questions here. Excellent. Looks like a bunch of you are interested. I think you're going to love what you see. Wonderful. So, Sorry, Jaron, HCI credit.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that you guys have that. If you have a screenshot or pen and paper, again, you'll get these slides at the end of the webinar in an email as well. But you can see there that that's the code, so you can write that one down. And then we can move on to our question and answer period. So you guys can go ahead and use that Q&A box or the chat box with any questions that may have come up throughout that webinar. So go ahead and kind of fill that in, no problem. I'll add them to the list. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of kick things off with Jason here. In your experience, what are some common mistakes that you seem to see with employee recognition?
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question. And I'd actually circle back to the presentation for a few key takeaways. I'd really encourage you, the people who participated in today's call, to survey your staff to find out how they might want to be rewarded and recognized. I think it's almost easy and also at the same time hard, but you can kind of reflect and be like, I think my employees want A, B, and C. When basically by doing a survey, you can find out exactly what they want and exactly how they want to be recognized and rewarded. So, and also of note, maybe you have a team of 1,000, 10,000 employees. You don't have to survey everybody, but sometimes just surveying a cross section, 5, 10% of different employee populations. I know Jaron's run a bunch of those surveys and seen some really interesting results, but survey your staff and then reward and recognize them in a way that actually matters to them. So that'd be really important. And then also, I think having a really good implementation strategy is really powerful as well, to seeing good uptake, engagement, and participation.
So definitely, and Dale actually has a great question to add on to that. And how do you maintain that recognition after that launch process? Because there's times where that program launch happens and everyone gets engaged, and then it kind of starts to slowly die down. So, are there any best practices in that sense?
Absolutely, yeah. So I actually have a quick slide here, I think, that speaks to that. So there's kind of two parts to this. It says CEO storytelling, but in summary, most people on today's call, I suspect, have like an all hands meeting, a fireside chat, some sort of meeting that happens monthly or quarterly. What I'd do is I'd weave in into your agenda, I'd add a good news section. And in that good news section, have leaders recognize staff for the good work that's happened over the past 30 or 90 days. What happens when you have senior leaders recognizing good performance? You'll see participation in your recognition program go way up, because employees are like, wow, like senior leaders really pay attention to this. Also, when people hear a story told about their colleague, they also want a story told about themselves. It's super interesting. I've studied a lot about narrative and epics and storytelling. People love to learn through stories, and we identify heroes and hero stories through great storytelling. So if a CEO gets up in front of a team, recognizes somebody, your staff will naturally want to do those behaviors more. They'll want to emulate that hero story more. And they also want a story told about them. So basically, recognize staff performance on a recurring basis and get leadership participation is a great way to ensure ongoing participation.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Yeah, we also have another great question. Rebecca asked, do you have any ideas for state governments with little money to offer? We actually just have a great article that we wrote about that too, with how recognition can still be so impactful with smaller budgets. But Jason, did you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Jaron. And I'll share my 2 cents on this. And if you want to jump in at the end of it, I'd love to get your thoughts as well, my man. But in summary, we've worked with organizations, for example, like University of Texas Arlington. They have a great recognition program where staff can recognize one another. When it comes to rewards, all the rewards are kind of like no cost, low cost rewards. So they give out things like swag, like corporate branded swag. Yeah, again, you can do things like time off. You can reward staff with items that don't actually have a hard cost necessarily associated with them. So you can roll out a really impactful program for a very, very low fee. And we've done this a bunch of time with nonprofits. We've done it with like larger organizations like university, post-secondary institutions as well. So just getting creative around the reward side of things. And that's, again, where the survey can come in so handy. You can ask your staff how they want to be rewarded, and you can even predefine like, 10, 20 different options that cost, in your case, a state government. maybe have no direct cost associated with them. So you can have some sort of cool reward. And also, I don't want to underemphasize just the recognition act on its own is massively powerful. It's like 80 to 90% of the recognition is the recognition act itself. The rewards are super cool. They're like the cherry on top. So yeah, I hope that was Rebecca. I hope that was, oh, cool. You're welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just going to mention that too. Obviously, there's the reward side of it, but the actual communication channels also that we mentioned earlier in the presentation, hitting more of those increases that engagement with more recognition, and that, you know, giving that recognition isn't have a monetary value to it, so that really makes people feel appreciated as well. So really hitting home kind of the purpose of it. And also Rachel had a question here too, is can we forward your recognition demo to other organizations? So that's kind of understanding maybe where we can learn a little bit more about bucket list and the demos as well. Jason?
Oh yeah, so great question. Thanks, Rachel. You can find us online at bucketlisterewards.com. You can request a demo there. You can kind of learn a bit more about the product. We actually have a ton of really cool articles and, you know, best practices as well. So feel free to check us out there if you want to.
Awesome. Yeah, we have some time for maybe one or two more questions. I wanted to ask here too, is to talk a little bit more about that launch program, kind of the process and how long that would take, Jason, for a recognition program.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see somebody asked for a copy of the slide presentation. We'll definitely share this with everybody along with all the resources and tools we promised. But just to talk very briefly about how to really launch a good recognition program. Again, in my experience, and we've launched everything from like 10-person companies to 50,000+ organizations. I'll speak tops of the wave. So first of all, you want to create a bit of a recognition team, especially maybe it's one person, maybe it's as in a larger organization, it's a larger group. You want to educate them on the value of recognition. And if you have a proper platform or program, you want to show them how to use it. I'd also highly encourage you to get the participation of what we call ambassadors. These are like the boots on the ground people you can give early access to the program. And then prior to launch, get key staff like leaders, managers, and ambassadors, get them to go in, hand out some sample recognitions, get them to do the activity just once. When people do something once, they're far more likely to do it again in the future. And as a part of that, you want to provide a bunch of robust training. And then when it comes to the launch of the program, make the launch super fun and impactful. If you're one office, cool. Do some sort of launch ceremony. You can do it online via Zoom, or you can do it in person if that's how you operate. If you have multiple geographies, I'd encourage you to launch in multiple geos, like, you know, launch in the New York office, the Seattle office, the Berlin office, set up local launches. Because as everybody knows, companies, they might have like one mega brand, but they often operate in micro communities, which are often attached to geographies. So launch in these different geographies. And my big takeaway and recommendation for the launch is have senior leaders and leaders recognize employees at the launch ceremony and provide some sort of personalized reward. Because if employees can see what the program's all about, you know, leaders and employees recognizing one another and cool personalized rewards, it creates a huge positive buzz. And then lastly, just to circle back on a previous point, once the program's up and running, just be sure to keep talking about it on a regular basis, you know, monthly, weekly, I've seen even quarterly. Just make sure managers and leaders keep talking about it. And that'll ensure a healthy launch and good program longevity.
That's awesome. Thanks for running us through that process, Jason. Any more last minute questions, go ahead and toss into that chat. The last one for me is just understanding how you can keep everyone motivated when they're not actually getting recognized. Common issues we see is, you know, if someone's just recognizing each other back and forth, but how to keep everybody motivated, not just the ones that are getting recognized.
Yeah, so there's a ton of ways. It's like providing training up front will ensure a higher participation rate. Rolling out a peer-to-peer program is super powerful. You can do some fun tactical things, like you can build points in your program. And what we've seen for certain is when you associate points to the program, you'll see a higher participation rate. Again, if you have a platform, or even if you don't, build in some sort of automated nudges, gentle reminders for people who aren't participating to participate in the program. Those are all great ways to get people to participate and recognize one another for good work.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jason. I think, I think that kind of takes us off for today. Like we mentioned, we will be sending the slides to you and all those resources as well throughout the presentation. And sorry, I misspoke. I think it's the SHRM credit will be also on the slides that you'll get as well. So you can have that as a resource. And thanks so much for joining us today. We had a blast.
Great. And last comment from my side, Jared and I genuinely love helping people out when it comes to recognition rewards. If there's any question that pops up after today's presentation, feel free to just connect with us on LinkedIn, or you can email us directly. You'll see Jared's email address come through. But sincerely, we love to help out. It's what we do. So feel free to reach out if we can be of assistance in any ways. And other than that, I hope everybody here has an awesome Tuesday. Go on, enjoy your day, enjoy your week. And I hope you guys have a ton of fun implementing your recognition programs. Thank you so much, everybody. It was great to connect today.
Yeah. Appreciate all the thank yous. You guys rock. Have a great week.
Thank you very much.